lowest, greatest, highest, I will come to thee.
Have you ever thought of yourself as a branch? It may sound silly, but in John 15, verses 1 through 6, Jesus uses the analogy of a vine and branches to describe the relationship that he shares with his followers. I am the true vine, and my Father is the vine dresser. Every branch in me that does not bear fruit, he takes away, and every branch that bears fruit, he prunes, that it may bear more fruit. You are already clean because of the word which I have spoken to you. Abide in me, and I in you. As the branch cannot bear fruit of itself unless it abides in the vine, neither can you unless you abide in me. I am the vine, you are the branches. He who abides in me, and I in him, bears much fruit. For without me you can do nothing. If anyone does not abide in me, he is cast out as a branch and is withered, and they gather them and throw them into the fire, and they are burned. John 15, verses 1 through 6. Let us see what lessons we can glean from this analogy. We need to understand that these branches are not referring to denominations, as some like to teach, because there were no denominations in the first century. 1 Corinthians 1, verses 10 through 13. These branches refer to individual Christians. As Jesus said, you are the branches. Since we are the branches, what is our relationship to Jesus? Jesus called himself the true vine. Just as a vine supplies all of its branches with the nutrients they need to produce fruit, Jesus supplies all of his followers with what they need to produce spiritual fruit that will be pleasing to God. What is this fruit? But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, long-suffering, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. Against such there is no law. Galatians 5, verses 22 through 23. As a Christian, we must strive to produce the fruits of the Spirit. But we cannot do this unless we have been grafted in to the true vine by becoming a Christian. One becomes a Christian by hearing the Word of God, Romans 10, verse 17, believing Jesus is the Son of God, John 8, verse 24, repenting, Luke 13, verse number 3, confessing Jesus as Lord, Romans 10, verses 9 and 10, and by being baptized into Christ for the remission of sins, Acts 2, verse 38, and chapters 22 and verse 16. One is put into Christ, or we could say grafted into the true vine at the point of baptism, according to Galatians 3, verse 27, and Romans 6 and verse number 3. We also learn that when the branches produce fruit, it says that the Father prunes them so they can bring forth more fruit. When we live in such a way that we are producing spiritual fruit, God, through His providence and the teaching of His Word, will help us to thrive. 2 Timothy 3, verses 16 through 17, 2 Peter 1, verse number 3. Finally, I must also mention the consequences of not producing fruit. Jesus says that the branch that does not produce is going to be thrown into the fire. A branch that does not produce fruit is a burden on the rest of the plant. Therefore, the vine dresser, that is the Father, cuts the branch off so that the others can flourish. If we do not produce good fruit in our lives as we serve God, we will be cut off as well. The question is, are you a branch that is producing fruit or one that is about to be cut off?